Manchester United have been knocked out of the Champions League. They've been knocked out of Europe following their 1-0 defeat to Bayern Munich this week. And things can't get much worse for Erik ten Hag's men. They're in dismal form, things don't seem to be getting much better, and we don't really know where we go from here. There's a lot of problems for Ten Hag to sort out, but there's one which he might be able to fix. Now listen, you can look at the back line and the defending has been amateurish at best for most of this season. And then going forward to the forward line, we've not been scoring enough goals, we're not creating enough chances, they're not being clinical enough. There's tons of things you can talk about at either end of the pitch. But what it all comes down to ultimately, for the most part, is how Man United's midfield has been dreadful. And that's the thing that Ten Hag needs to sort out, because he's just been doing the same thing over and over again in midfield, and it does not seem to be working. If you look at the base of that midfield, then you've got Casemiro, Sofian Amrabat, or Kobbie Mainoo, who've all played in there, and all struggled in games because they've often been isolated in and out of possession, and that's just so difficult for a midfield player of that kind of ilk who's trying to either defend at the base or start attacks from the base. It's so difficult for them to work when you've got two other midfielders who are really often looking to play further forward. Now, Scott McTominay, he's the person that everyone's talking about at the moment, because some are saying, look at the goals he's scoring, he's United's top goal scorer this season. He's doing good things for the team, and he is. He's getting in those goal scoring positions, and he's probably one of the only United players who are confident at finishing at the moment. But then you look at the issues that creates when your midfielder, who's supposed to be your second deepest, maybe you'd think that he'd be part of the pivot, when he is making constant runs into the box, and it's leaving United quite open a lot of the time. And the Bournemouth game was a perfect example of it, because in that game McTominay didn't score. He didn't put away a couple of the chances which he ended up getting by making those forward runs, and that left United wide open on the other side. And Bournemouth's manager brought it up after the game, and it seems like such a simple way to play against this United side right now. And you saw against Bayern Munich that the way that Ten Hag tried to combat this was by dropping Bruno Fernandes deeper. And there's a few issues with this, because that isn't his best position, first of all. And he's still moving up with McTominay to advanced positions a lot. He's just doing the running back, which is in turn, it's almost pointless running, because you don't need those players both up there. And this isn't just a McTominay issue, as he's clearly being instructed to play like this, because we've seen Casemiro do it before, and we were all kind of making the same criticisms of his game at that time, when he was almost box crashing and focusing on goals rather than his midfield play. And we've got to move away from that. It's clear why Ten Hag is trying to do this, because our front three are not firing, and Scott McTominay is a goal scorer from those midfield areas. But you need to build a base before you can play well consistently, and United don't have that base. It seems like Ten Hag's just looking for a way out, and he's looking for Scott McTominay or Casemiro, if he was fit, to bail United out with those goals. Whereas instead, if he wants to stay in this job long term, he needs to look at building a base and having Bruno drop deeper, which isn't his best position, or having players like Sofian Amrabat, Casemiro, or Kobbie Mainoo on their own at the base of midfield. It's not how you're going to do it. You're going to do it from building that midfield base, which is why he's got to change his structure in there. So the first thing he needs to do is to make that a midfield two. To make that a midfield pivot next to each other, and two players who can play that possession-based style. So then if United aren't counter-attacking and looking to crash the box, they can actually control the game, because they have more than one player in that midfield position to try and dominate the ball. With Casemiro unavailable, it's got to be Mainoo and Amrabat in those pivot positions. We all know that McTominay's good at what he's trying to do right now, but that's not what United need. we might sacrifice a few goals because that's what McTominay guarantees if he's playing like that. But I think you've got to make that midfield more solid, not only to build offensively, but to get some more defensive stability in there. And Mainu and Amrabat are both pretty solid defensive players. Amrabat is a good reader of the game, but he doesn't seem very mobile, especially in the Premier League. Whereas Mainu, a little bit different. He might not read the game as perfectly, but he does read it pretty well for his age and considering he's only played a few times in the first team. But he's got that energy to get across the pitch. Those two seem like they need to play together, and they haven't started a single game together yet, which is quite surprising. Ten Hag needs to try it. In front of them, Bruno Fernandes. Of course, it's going to be Bruno. He's United's best number 10. He's their best creator, and they need to get him in those midfield areas more advanced than he's played in recent games, and get him creating goals. That's his game. But specifically, United need to try and stop him from drifting wide as much, because that's what he enjoys to do in games. But United can often get exploited in the midfield because of this. Get Bruno playing that number 10 position, but make sure that he's staying central. That's where his game is best. He can do well drifting out to those whips, but you want him centrally for in and out of possession, because he gets the running done in that midfield, and you want him in there as much as possible. You don't want him running to the left. You don't want him running up front. You don't want him running to the right, pressing whoever. You want him in that midfield to keep it compact. And to be fair, against Bayern Munich at points when United were out of possession, they done this pretty well. Bruno was staying more central, and their block looked better for periods of the game, but it wasn't perfect at all. And then if you've got those three in the midfield together, hopefully United can see some progression both in their build-up play, because they'll have two players in that deeper midfield area who are both looking to get on the ball and progress it. And then obviously there's injury troubles elsewhere which can impact things, because you'd like to think that Mason Mount can get into this team somehow, but he's been out injured and Kobe's came through, and it looks difficult for him to get back into the side. But then you look elsewhere, and if Maguire's out for an extended period, you don't want Johnny Evans to stay in this side. But yeah, there's issues a lot of places, and that's what I was going to go on to. You can play this midfield three, and it might not work perfectly. It is almost not going to work perfectly, because there isn't much goals in that midfield unless Bruno hits an incredible vein of form. Because you look at United's front three, and if you've got a brilliant Marcus Rashford on, then brilliant. If you've got Rasmus Højlund clicking, then yes. But United's not like that right now. You've got Rashford out of form. Players can't really score goals. So there's going to be a goal scoring problem no matter what at United. And I think that will stay whether McTominay's starting or not. So you've got to take a risk. And I think your risk is taking him out of the side. He started 13 of the last 14 games and played 90 minutes throughout. And United haven't looked good. So they've got to change that midfield. And I think despite McTominay scoring some very important goals for United to get some points on the board, he needs to come out, and he can be a brilliant option to play in the last 20 minutes of games to crash that box and try and get goals, like he has a couple of times coming off the bench this season. But yeah, it's got to change. That midfield is the main issue for Ten Hag this season, and whether or not he does eventually go, you want to see him try something else in there, because it just looks too stubborn at the moment. It looks like he's trying to almost save his job by getting the goals from that midfield, but we want to see progression of the team, and I think the only way that we might be able to see that is by introducing a more dominant midfield in terms of on the ball and defensively. And I think Amrabat, Mainu, and potentially Casemiro in for one of those guys once he comes back in from injury, and Bruno Fernandes in front is the way to go. And you obviously need the fullbacks, the striker, the wingers to all somewhat click a bit more than they are right now to make this successful. But it's worth a try, because what's happening right now, United aren't controlling games. They're not looking confident, and they're really defensively fragile. So I think these changes have to happen. we'll see what happens. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments about Manchester United's midfield this season. Let me know what you think Ten Hag will do, what you want him to do, and anything else that you want to just complain about United's season in the comments below. Make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. We're looking to try and make more videos because we've been slacking. We've been slacking just like United have, and we're looking to change that. So yeah, keep an eye out for new videos, and thank you guys. We'll see you in the next one.